I watched the lights flicker across their living room window, each twinkle like a quiet slap in my face. From my small apartment downtown, I could almost hear their laughter echoing through my empty walls. Christmas Eve. I used to love this night. But this year, my phone stayed silent. No group texts with my siblings. No call from Mom reminding me to bring dessert. They didn't even bother sending a pity invite. And as I sat alone on my old beige couch, staring at the takeout container on my coffee table, something inside me shifted. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just leaned back, let the cold silence sink into my bones, and whispered to myself, "They want to pretend I don't exist. Fine, let's see how invisible I really am." The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The world outside was still asleep, blanketed in a soft gray that felt like my own heart, numb, quiet, waiting. I wrapped myself in my old wool coat, made a bitter cup of coffee, and sat by the window, watching the sky bleed from black to lilac. My mind replayed every Christmas memory like a cruel montage. Me at 5 years old, dancing around the tree with a red ribbon in my hair. Me at 12, baking cookies with Mom while my brothers teased me about burning them. Me at 20, holding a gift I'd saved for weeks to buy, only for Dad to look past me as if I were air. By 30, their love felt like charity. Now at 33, even their charity had ended. I thought about texting my mother. Just one line, "Merry Christmas." But I didn't. Instead, I opened my laptop and typed in the address of their street. That's when I saw it. The listing for the house next door. $4.2 million. My chest burned cold, and without thinking twice, I whispered, "Merry Christmas" to me. I spent the entire morning researching the house. Every photo, every angle, every inch of marble and glass became a silent promise to myself. The realtor's voicemail greeted me with holiday cheer, and I left a message with my full name and number, my voice calm and poised. After hanging up, I stared at my reflection in the dark screen of my laptop. My hair was messy, my eyes swollen from another sleepless night, but behind that broken woman was something solid, something that refused to die. Around noon, I saw on social media that my family was gathering for Christmas lunch. My sister posted a boomerang clinking glasses with captions like, "Family is everything." I almost laughed. Family is everything, unless you're me. That phrase played in my mind while I waited for the realtor to call back. When she finally did, her voice sparkled with excitement at a potential buyer ready to close before New Year's. She asked why I was moving so suddenly. I smiled softly and said, "I just want to be closer to my family." If this story resonates with you, please hit like and subscribe. It helps more people discover these true stories of silent power. The realtor arranged a private viewing for the next morning. As I drove to the neighborhood where I spent every Christmas of my childhood, my chest tightened with memories I couldn't control. Passing the old bakery where Dad used to buy our panettone, the park where I learned to ride my bike while Mom cheered, and finally turning onto their street, lined with cars of guests they loved enough to invite. I parked across from their house, my hands trembling slightly as I stepped out in my tailored black coat. The winter air burned my lungs awake. When I entered the house for sale, it was silent, echoing with emptiness and potential. Marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, a kitchen worthy of a magazine cover, and a master suite with a balcony that overlooked their backyard. I walked to that balcony, leaned against the glass, and looked down. There they were, my siblings laughing around the fire pit, my mother refilling glasses, my father grilling steaks like it was summer. None of them noticed me standing above, unseen, silent, powerful. The realtor stood beside me, praising the natural light, the imported finishes, the heated floors, but her words dissolved into the muffled laughter rising from their yard. My gaze stayed fixed on my family as they toasted each other, plates piled high with roast and glazed carrots. My sister wore a red dress that shimmered under the winter sun, My brothers argued over football scores, and my mother laughed with her head thrown back, free of any worry that her eldest daughter was missing from the table. The realtor asked if I'd like to see the media room, but I shook my head softly. "I've seen everything I need," I whispered. I turned to her and smiled, a calm, sharp smile that felt like iron in my chest. "I'll offer full price, all cash. I want to close by New Year's." Her eyes widened, hands fumbling for her tablet. She asked if I was sure. I nodded, feeling something settle inside me. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on my mattress, staring at the ceiling while the city lights flickered across the cracks in the paint. The offer had been sent, and the realtor promised to push it through first thing in the morning. I imagined myself walking through that house, barefoot on polished marble, pouring coffee in front of those vast windows, watching their lives unfold below like a silent film I no longer starred in. For years, I had tried to earn a place in their hearts. I sent gifts they never opened, messages they left unread, offers to help that were brushed aside with polite coldness. I thought love meant proving myself worthy. But as I lay there in the quiet dark, a truth settled over me like snowfall. I didn't need their love to exist. I didn't need their approval to be powerful. All I needed was to stand where they could see me, not begging, not broken, but whole, silent, and unmovable. 2 days later, the offer was accepted without counter. The realtor called me just after lunch, her voice bright with congratulations. I thanked her calmly, feeling every syllable land like a quiet drumbeat in my chest. After signing the paperwork, I drove back to their street. Snow had fallen overnight, covering the roofs like powdered sugar on a forgotten cake. As I parked in front of my new house, I saw my brother shoveling their driveway. He didn't even glance up as I stepped onto the sidewalk. For a moment, I wanted to wave, to call out his name like I used to when we were kids, racing bikes down this street, but I didn't. Instead, I walked up the stone steps of my house and unlocked the door for the first time. The air inside was cold and untouched, but to me, it felt warm with silent victory. I stood there in the foyer, breathing deeply, letting the scent of new beginnings fill my lungs. For once, I wasn't looking in from the outside. I was exactly where I chose to be. That weekend, the moving trucks arrived before dawn. I stood in the driveway wrapped in my wool coat, sipping steaming coffee while men carried in boxes labeled with parts of my old life. Books, kitchen, office. My neighbors peeked through curtains, curious about the woman who had bought the most expensive house on the block overnight. As the sun rose, casting gold across the snow, I walked room to room, feeling each space come alive with my presence. In the master bedroom, I placed my favorite chair by the balcony window facing their yard. I imagined them having summer barbecues, winter bonfires, Easter egg hunts, all under my silent gaze. I wasn't there to flaunt or threaten. I was there because they erased me, and now I had written myself back into their story in permanent ink. That afternoon, as I sat in my chair with a blanket over my knees, I watched my mother step outside to toss breadcrumbs for the birds. She glanced up at my house, eyes squinting against the sun, and for a brief moment, our gazes met. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I simply sipped my tea and watched her look away first. Days turned into weeks, and the holidays faded into the grayness of winter. Each morning, I opened my curtains wide, letting the golden dawn flood my bedroom as I watched them rush to their cars for work, arms full of briefcases and travel mugs. At night, their windows glowed with family dinners I was never invited to, but now I watched from my own kingdom. Sometimes, I'd see my sister walking her golden retriever past my driveway, stealing glances at the luxury car parked there. Other times, my brother would glance up at my balcony as he took out the trash, his expression unreadable under the porch light. They didn't knock, they didn't call, and I didn't want them to. I had spent too many years bending myself into shapes to fit their table. Now, I ate alone at mine, candle flickering beside my wine glass, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the peace of being accepted, but the deeper peace of finally accepting myself exactly as I was, with no applause needed. One Sunday afternoon, I decided to walk my property line. The snow was melting into slush, revealing the emerald grass beneath. I wore a cream wool sweater and dark jeans, hair pulled back in a low knot as I strolled along the hedges that separated my yard from theirs. From the corner of my eye, I saw my father standing by their barbecue, wiping it down for spring. For a moment, I wondered if he'd look up, call my name, invite me over for a burger like he did when I was 10. But he didn't. His gaze flickered past me like I was part of the scenery. I kept walking, my boots crunching softly on the gravel path. When I reached the far end of my garden, I stopped to admire the view. My home stood tall and elegant against the winter sky, its windows reflecting the last rays of golden light. And in that quiet moment, I felt a surge of power ripple through me, a silent knowing that I didn't need their recognition to exist. I had built a world that belonged only to me. Spring arrived with quiet splendor. Cherry blossoms bloomed along the street, their petals floating down like soft confetti each time the breeze whispered through. I spent mornings tending to my new garden, kneeling in the cool soil, planting rows of lavender and rosemary under the gentle warmth of the rising sun. Sometimes I could hear their voices drift over the fence, my sister gossiping on speakerphone, my brothers arguing about sports, my father humming old ranchera songs as he trimmed his hedges. Their lives carried on without me, just as they always had, but now, mine carried on without them too. Each evening, I sat on my balcony, a cup of chamomile tea warming my hands, watching the twilight settle over both houses like a silken veil. I didn't hate them. I didn't wish them harm. I simply no longer craved their approval. My existence felt like quiet poetry, once erased, now etched in stone, unmovable, undeniable. Summer came swiftly, bringing heat waves that shimmered above the pavement. I installed a small pool in my backyard. Nothing ostentatious, just enough to float under the morning sun. One Saturday, as I swam lazy circles, I heard children laughing next door. My nieces and nephews were visiting. I could hear my sister's voice scolding them for running near the grill, my brother-in-law joking about burnt burgers. Their happiness drifted over the fence like barbecue smoke, warm and pungent. I climbed out of the water, droplets rolling down my arms as I wrapped myself in a linen towel. Standing there, under the blazing sun, I looked towards their yard. I could see glimpses of them through the slats in the fence. Colorful plastic cups, paper plates piled with food, my father lounging in a deck chair, belly full and eyes half closed in satisfaction. No one thought to invite me over. No one even remembered I was there. And that realization didn't hurt. It freed me. Because in that moment, I understood. I was no longer waiting for a seat at their table. I had built my own, under the endless sky. Autumn arrived with its crisp winds and golden afternoons. I spent evenings curled up by my fireplace, reading books I never had time for in my old life. One Saturday, I baked pumpkin bread, filling my house with cinnamon and nutmeg. As it cooled on the counter, I stood at my balcony window, staring at their yard covered in dry leaves. My mother was there, raking slowly, her movements weary, her hair now more silver than black. I watched her pause to rest on the handle of the rake, her shoulders sagging under invisible weight. For a fleeting moment, the urge to go to her, to help, to feel her arms around me again, clawed at my chest. But then I remembered every Christmas alone, every birthday ignored, every time she chose silence over defending me. I took a deep breath and exhaled it all away. Instead of knocking on her door, I sliced myself a piece of pumpkin bread, butter melting into its warmth, and sat down by my window. watching, feeling the sweetness on my tongue, knowing that forgiveness didn't mean inviting them back into my life. It simply meant I was free. Winter returned, blanketing the street in quiet white. Christmas lights twinkled on their house again, bright reds and greens flashing against the darkness. I decorated mine with soft golden lights that wrapped around the balcony and lined the windows, casting a warm glow that spilled onto the snow below. On Christmas Eve, I made myself a small feast: roasted chicken, garlic butter potatoes, and chocolate cake for dessert. I set the table with my best china, lit tall ivory candles, and poured a glass of deep red wine. As I sat alone in the flickering glow, I could hear them next door, music playing, laughter rolling like distant thunder. But this year, I didn't feel anger or sadness. I felt peace. I raised my glass towards their house in a silent toast, whispering softly, "Thank you for teaching me who I never want to become." That night, I slept with my curtains open, moonlight flooding my room, illuminating the quiet certainty blooming in my chest. I no longer lived in their shadows. I had built my own light, and it was enough to guide me home. The new year dawned cold and pale, with skies washed clean by winter rain. On the first morning of January, I woke before sunrise, wrapped myself in a wool shawl, and stepped onto my balcony. The neighborhood lay silent beneath the early light, each rooftop crowned with frost. I sipped hot tea, feeling its warmth seep into my chest as I watched the sun climb above their house, casting long shadows across their yard. They still hadn't called. They never would. But as I stood there, breathing in the crisp air, I realized their silence no longer held power over me. My life stretched before me like an untouched field of snow, quiet, vast, and entirely mine to shape. I thought about the girl I used to be, crying on Christmas Eve, begging to belong. I whispered to her through the years, "We made it, look at us now." I closed my eyes, letting the winter sun kiss my face. For the first time in my life, I felt whole. Not because they finally saw me, but because I finally saw myself, strong, silent, and unstoppable. Thank you for watching until the end. If you've ever lived through something similar, share your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because sometimes the loudest impact is made in silence.